Good morning and welcome to the last chapel that we celebrate the World Interfaith and Harmony Week here at Concordia. The proposal for a week of World Interfaith Harmony Week was proposed to the United Nations in the fall of 2010 by King Abdallah II of Jordan and was adopted unanimously by the Assembly. It's based on shared values and convictions of the love of God and love of neighbor, or the love of the good and the love of the neighbor. And the resolution calls for shared religious and non-religious expressions during this week. It also affirms the importance of mutual understanding and interreligious dialogue as important dimensions of a culture of peace. Concordia first marked this World Interfaith Harmony Week 2 years ago, and so when Julia Brucklecker and Jake Bordlin asked us this last fall if we would partner again, we were more than pleased to say yes, and to work with them in the months leading up to this week. We are also pleased to mark this week in partnership with Better Together and the Forum on Faith and Life. This past week, we have been blessed to hear from 4 different speakers, all speaking from different faith and non-faith traditions, who have reflected on World Interfaith Harmony Week. On Monday, we welcomed Concordia's own professor, Dr. Ahmed Asal, who spoke from his tradition of Islam. On Tuesday, we had Richard Henderson, a member of the board of directors of the Center for Interfaith Projects, speaking from his tradition of Baha'i. And yesterday we welcomed Kim Anderson, a professor of early childhood and education at White Earth Tribal Community College in Monoman, Minnesota, speaking from her tradition of Native American spirituality. Today we are pleased to welcome interfaith scholar Robyn Adams, speaking from her interfaith experience at Concordia and coming from her background of atheism. We also invite you tonight to join us for George Cannell's lecture on Kierkegaard and the paradox of religious diversity. We thank you all for your participation in this week, and we especially welcome Robyn Adams for her reflection this week, or for today, and then for Better Together for their hosting of chapel this morning.
The Concordia mission statement is, the purpose of Concordia College is to influence the affairs of the world by sending into society thoughtful and informed men and women dedicated to the Christian life. The interfaith cooperation statement is, Concordia College practices interfaith cooperation because of its Lutheran dedication to prepare thoughtful and informed global citizens who foster wholeness and hope, build peace through understanding, and serve the world together.
As an atheist, when I first came to Concordia College a few years ago, my first impressions were that of fear. I was afraid of this room right here and worried that I would be forced to pray in it. And I was worried with the cross even at the top of the bell tower. Luckily for me, my tour guide that year was the co-president of Better Together and an interfaith scholar. She told me of the wonderful interfaith work our school was doing and convinced me successfully to come here. During my first semester, I ended up taking a C.S. Lewis course, an author I had not realized somehow that he was a Christian author, actually probably one of the most notable Christian authors of the 20th century. Again, I missed that. I don't know how. But what that brought me into was a journey of religion that hadn't been presented to me before. When Ibu Patel came and my class went together the first week, he talked to me about the ability for different people to come around matters of faith and non-faith traditions to make the world better. I wanted to do what he was talking about. I wanted to stop sex trafficking. I wanted to stop global hunger. I wanted to be a part of that movement, and I did. For the first semester that I was here, I became very involved with Better Together. And I really started doing the interfaith thing. And in fact, over the next few years, I saw all across Concordia that they were really engaged with pluralism, really engaged with interfaith. But something that happened a lot was when I would talk to community members or even people in our own school, they would say, hold up, wait a second. How can Concordia, a Lutheran school, be doing all this interfaith work? How is it that you can be both Christian and accepting of this diversity? And this was a question that I found a lot of other people had, even other people who were involved in the interfaith movement like myself. So with this knowledge and this question, are we losing our identity? The President's Interfaith Advisory Council decided to try to answer this question by making an interfaith cooperation statement. So we broke up into a subcommittee and started asking these questions and writing a draft. We did different community events to hear what the community had to say and started asking these questions. What became perfectly obvious during the question is the process of answering this question is that asking the question in itself was just as important as finding an answer. We came as a community and answered the question about why it is that speaks to our Lutheran identity, why it is that we decide to do interfaith work. The process is important. After gathering with the community with all different kinds of diversity, we came up with the statement that you heard just now. We are very happy to announce that this statement was approved both by the faculty and student senate unanimously. In fact, even in the last few weeks, we've had a plaque with it in the Knutson Center. One of my favorite parts of developing this statement was actually one of the words, because of our Lutheran education. The because was very important and very much resonated with me. There were some people who felt that that language was too strong. Why does it have to be because? Why can't it be guided by? I remember one meeting when we discussed this one word very much in depth. People, many of the Lutherans, in fact, I noticed, were going for the less strong guided by, worrying that it would scare away minority people like myself. It was actually me, as an atheist, and one of the Muslim colleagues on the panel who really argued for the because of. She said later that she wanted to know she was welcome because of the Lutheran dedication, not just because they happened to be guided by it at the time. Looking back on my own faith journey, the because of what I am, because of our identities is something that really stands out and is important to me. One of the moments in my interfaith journey that I really realized this was when I was working with the Council on American Islamic Relations in Washington, D.C. After working there for a few months, looking at Islamophobia, all the different things that Muslims have to go through this country, the violent and often and even sometimes deadly consequences that Muslims in my own country have to go through, I was wrapping up the end of my internship. And I was walking back with my director, and he knew I was an atheist from the beginning, but he didn't really want to ask about it. Lots of times people don't really want to ask about religion. They're taught not to ask those kind of things. He comes up to me and he says, "Robyn, you've been working on this. You've been doing a great job. You're really concerned about Islamophobia, and I see that. But why?" To be honest, the question took me a bit off guard. My entire time I was there, I was talking about being an atheist, but atheist just literally means not theist, not belief in God. So why was I doing that? It was in that moment that I realized that why I'm an atheist and actually why I do interfaith work is because the exact same things I saw in my boss at the Council on American Islamic Relations, and the exact same things I saw in my colleagues there, the dedication to justice, the values of equality, and the never-ending fight, even against diversity and adversity, that is what I aspire to do in my life. Looking more broadly, my Christian friends that I've made in interfaith work, my Jewish friends, my Muslim friends, these are all people that have inspired my own journey, which is kind of interesting. How is it that I, as an atheist, am inspired by somebody who believes something completely different than me? For example, I don't believe in God. Lots of my friends do. Lots of the people I learned from do. These are deep intrinsic differences, and they continue. I've found lots of inspiration from people who have very set beliefs on very important things like abortion, things like political views, things about how to address inequality in the world. These are very important and should not be ignored. Sometimes in interfaith work, I get the impression that some people think it's all fluffy, that it's all just nice, it's all just easy work. In my experience, this isn't true at all. Dr. Ibu Patel once said at a lecture I attended that interfaith work is about looking at the elephant in the room and still acknowledging all the rest of the animals there too. Pushing back on that just a little bit, I think the elephant in the room is something that is very important to address, and actually something that is maybe blocking or obscuring our views of all the animals hiding behind it. We are different people. Yes, we do have a lot of the values that are the same, and we can learn from that, but we remain at our core different people. For me, this means that I don't look at somebody first at their differences, but first at the commons, but I don't ignore those differences either. For example, one of my Christian friends has opposite views with me in about everything. She is conservative to my liberal, and financially, we think very different things. Even when we talk about elections, we pretty much check opposite things on the list. And yet, she's one of my closest friends, somebody who I've traveled across the world with when I went to India, and someone who can relate to me on levels that I cannot relate with a lot of other people. And I've learned from her. This idea of because, not despite, is one of the most important things in interfaith work. It's because of these differences. It is because of who I know, who I am guided by, that really make me what I do. So in looking at the Concordia College Interfaith Cooperation Statement, that is one of the things that resonates most with me. Concordia College practices interfaith cooperation because of its Lutheran dedication to prepare thoughtful and informed global citizens who foster wholeness and hope, build peace through understanding, and serve the world together. Looking widely at our view of the college and view of what it will look like, and answering those questions that I heard in the community before. It is not despite the fact. It is not some coincidence that I am accepted by here. It is not something that is overcome. It is because we know that we can learn together, that we can grow from each other, because we are different, because that is okay within our traditions, because that's not even okay, because that is something to celebrate. Looking into the future of what this means for the world, what this means for myself, what this means for this campus, I think it's important to realize that in the future there will be people I disagree with. There will be people like my Christian friends who I disagree with on everything. But that doesn't mean that we aren't human. That doesn't mean that we can't work together. All right.
All right, so for our closing today, Robyn and I are going to read a poem called Faces in the Pain. In you, I see pain. In your eyes, I see the hurt. In your hands, I see the creases, worn from prayer. In the world, I see you, a Christian, and me, a Muslim. But in your pain, I see a human.
In you, I see pain. In your eyes, I see hurt. In your hands, I see the scriptures worn from use. In the world, I see you, a Muslim, and me, an atheist, but in your pain, I see a human.
In you, I see pain. In your eyes, I see the hurt. In your hands, I see the exhaustion, worn from concern. In the world, I see you, an atheist, and me, a Christian. But in your pain, I see a human.
Pain does not care about religion. Pain is a language spoken by all. Pain causes vulnerability and fear.
But despite all of the negatives, pain allows us to see each other face to face as humans. Thank you.
I wanted to leave a few minutes, a little unconventional for a chapel time, but I wanted to leave a few minutes for questions. It's like actually okay. I know chapel's like not normally the place for that, but I think it's important that we're in community with each other about this. So to repeat the question so people at home can hear it, the question, if I'm understanding it correctly, and please correct me if I don't, is how do you engage with people who aren't on board with diversity or people who are apathetic towards it? Yeah, okay. Yeah, people who are attacking what I'm working for. I do get this sometimes, so I appreciate the question. One of the things that I've noticed is that there are things that people care about, and maybe that thing is not me saying, hey, come do this interfaith service project. They might not really care for that, or they might say like, oh, no, interfaith, that's not for me. One of the things I like to do for that is find the common values, because there will be something at least we agree with. For example, a few years ago, I had a friend of mine who wasn't really into interfaith work, didn't see how it spoke to her faith tradition at all, but she was a dietetics major. And I told her, hey, do you know about all the different food restrictions within these different religions? Because we're doing an event on that. And she was really, really interested in that. That didn't get her to love interfaith right away. Even now, she's not entirely sure what she thinks about it, but it opened a door for conversation. The question was, how do I plan to use this interfaith work after I graduate? For me, one of the other big passions in my life, other than interfaith work, is environmental work and climate change in particular. And in my mind, these two aren't mutually exclusive. So one of the things I really want to do is investigate how these two things can benefit each other and work to make that a reality in the world. If there's no more questions, I invite you all to stay afterwards as well. We have cookies and coffees, but I want to read the Interfaith Cooperation Statement one more time. Concordia College practices interfaith cooperation because of its Lutheran dedication to prepare thoughtful and informed global citizens who foster wholeness and hope, build peace through understanding, and serve the world together. And I invite you all to do the same.